My name is Cary Anthony Stayner. I'm also known as the Yosemite Park Killer, or simply the Yosemite Killer. I was convicted of the murders of 4 women between February and July 1999. The murders occurred in Mariposa County, California, near Yosemite National Park, where I worked as a handyman at the Cedar Lodge Motel in El Portal, California, just outside the Highway 140 entrance to Yosemite National Park. Though I was linked to 4 victims I found through the motel, I was also suspected of murdering at least 4 more individuals who were either killed or disappeared around the area. Despite pleading insanity, citing events such as the kidnapping of my younger brother Stephen back in 1972, my mental state and sexual deviancy began long before that, and I was found guilty. I was sentenced to death for the 4 confirmed murders, and I'm still on death row at San Quentin State Prison in California.
This one is such a sad, horrific story. Trigger warning, some of the details are quite hard to listen to. This poor boy suffered terribly in the months leading up to his death. Jordan lived in Leeds with his mum, grandma and sister. Social services were involved briefly when Jordan was younger, as a social worker deemed it necessary to step in and offer some support. A primary school report stated that there was a general lack of Jordan's basic needs. He had a lack of toilet training, he had black teeth, and very little language skills. However, his mum Dawn pulled him out of school just after primary school and before he entered high school, and he became increasingly reclusive. There were visits to check on Jordan's homeschooling situation, and Dawn was encouraged to put Jordan back in school, as there was no adequate workspace for him in the home. But Dawn refused, and eventually there was very little involvement with social services, and it seems that Jordan was just kind of forgotten about. Jordan eventually became a complete recluse, having no contact with the outside world, and on June 30th, 2016, when he was just 18 years old, he suffered a cardiac arrest at home. Paramedics found Jordan on a blow-up mattress in the living room, completely unresponsive. He weighed just 5 stone 11 pounds and was likened to that of a concentration camp victim. He had sores and ulcers, some of which went down to the bone, and he was wearing a soiled nappy. Paramedics attempted CPR while the family watched completely emotionless. In fact, his mother Dawn said that his collapse was a blessing, as she wouldn't have to go to work that day. And the first thing she said to police when they arrived was, "How much is the funeral going to cost?" If that's not all shocking enough, police also discovered the dead body of a baby in a rucksack stuffed on top of a wardrobe in Jordan's bedroom, and they estimated it had been there for around 14 years. It was discovered that Jordan had been malnourished for around 6 months, despite there being 3 fridges in the house piled with food. His mum, grandma and sister were all arrested and charged with manslaughter. They had literally allowed Jordan to rot to death on a blow-up mattress in the living room and failed to get him any medical help. It was actually discovered that Dawn had attended a medical appointment for herself a few months before Jordan's death, but had failed to mention her son's deteriorating health. They could have got him help if they'd wanted to, but they didn't. Jordan's mother Dawn was sentenced to 4 years for manslaughter, his grandmother Denise was sentenced to 3 years for manslaughter, and his sister Abigail was sentenced to 18 months for allowing his death. None of them showed any remorse for Jordan's death, and they were all released within 3 years of being sentenced.
What's up, everybody? All right, you guys, so we have an update in the Tamia Taylor disappearance. So far we know that the 21-year-old mother of 2 went missing after going on a riverboat with her friends. So we have learned who those friends were. The actual friend of Tamia was a man by the name of Keandre Jenkins. Now, there were also 2 other women that were with them, but these 2 women were friends of Keandre's. So where this riverboat docks, basically you have to walk about 10 minutes in order to get there. So from where they parked, it's a man that drives this golf cart, and you can pay him in order to take you to the riverboat. So y'all, this golf cart driver is saying that after the riverboat came back, he actually saw Tamia on land. So this is very important because this is the first time somebody has actually said they saw her on dry land after the riverboat got back. Now, everyone else that saw her actually just saw her on their riverboat. Now, listen to what this man had to say.
In the background, it also got them a witness who claims he saw her on dry land after the cruise. You saw her off that boat? Yeah. Their search for answers got them in touch with Jay Munn, a golf cart taxi driver who says he saw Tamia Taylor with 2 women and a man after her cruise returned to port.
She was intoxicated, and she was, very intoxicated, and she was with some other people.
He says he offered the group a ride, but they turned him down and headed south on Riverside Drive on foot.
So y'all, what this man is saying is crazy because she was actually with 1 man and 2 women. And that's exactly who he's saying he saw her with after the riverboat got back. Now, Keandre Jenkins, this is one of the friends that was with her. He actually came forward and he talked to the news. He said that on social media, a lot of people were accusing him and his other 2 friends of drugging her or doing something to her, but he's saying that is not the case. But what Keandre is saying kind of contradicts what the taxi driver golf cart man is saying. Because Keandre is saying that she never got off that boat. He never saw her get off that boat. And he believes that something had to happen to her on that boat. So why would this golf cart taxi driver say that he actually stopped them, tried to give them a ride and everything after the fact? If Keandre is saying, no, we never even saw her after the cruise. Y'all, watch this.
To the bathroom and was gone for more than 15 minutes.
I walked down there to the first floor and I was talking to Kanisha and Shaquita. And I asked them, where's Tamia? They looked and said that she was just right here. So as soon as they said that, we all split up and searched the whole boat while the boat was moving, looking for Tamia.
Jenkins says the group of friends searched the entire boat, and around 1:45 a.m., when the cruise docked, they called police and Tamia's family. After the search of the boat and the bars on Beale Street, Tamia was still nowhere to be found.
I prayed that she didn't fall off that boat. I did somebody snatched her, or I did some people on that boat got something to do with it.
Y'all, this story is just getting more strange. It just doesn't make sense that this taxi driver would say that, no, I saw all of them together after the cruise. But Keandre is insisting that, no, we didn't see Tamia after the cruise. We even called her family and police to say that we didn't see her. Now, y'all, Tamia is still missing. There has been no sign of her anywhere. And the only video and pictures we have is of her on that riverboat.
To the scene, setting up a mobile command center as crews appear to search the water. This police report outlines the timeline of events. At 5 a.m. Sunday, her mother, Deborah Taylor, told officers she received a text the night before around 9:30 that Tamia had made it to Memphis. Then at 11:39, she says Tamia told her she was on the boat. When the boat docked at 1:30 a.m., her friend said Tamia was nowhere to be found. A story her mother questions.
The only thing they told me was she went upstairs on the 2nd floor to use the bathroom. She put her phone down on the table. We picked her phone up. We went and waited by the door for her to come out, and then we left. Why would you leave?
Now, y'all, this boat was jam-packed. There was so many people. The music was loud. It was a lot of drinking going on. And Keandre is also saying that she met a man while they were in line about to get on this boat. And the man was like telling her happy birthday, giving her money for a drink. So who is this man, and have police talk to this man? This is a 21-year-old mother of 2. She would not just disappear and just go off the grid after celebrating her birthday. Now, comment below and let me know your thoughts on this update, you guys. What do you think happened, and what do you think is going on with these friends?
Did they say to me when they came to see me?
Have they?
Yes.
And what did Cece say?
The first night, when they found Shannon's body, I'm going to be honest with you, Dr. Phil. I was laying in the bed weeping so hard, talking to God, and I said, I could just end my life now and go find my daughter. I'd fallen asleep. The next morning, I get a phone call, and they found Shannon's body. I said, do you want me to identify her on the phone? And he said, yeah, you could do that. And I said, is she beautiful? He said, yes. I said, does she have black hair? And he said, yes. And I said, then you have my daughter. That night, I was laying in bed, and I just felt a presence, and I heard my daughter. I felt her, and I heard her say, I love you, Mommy, and I'm sorry. She told me she was at peace. I finally fell asleep with my daughter at my presence, and she slept with me. I just felt her. The following day, I get a phone call, and They said, Sandy, we found your granddaughter, but we're not sure which one.
Yeah, they would set up a system and they would say you do it. Now I may not have succumbed to it, but then they shoot you. So sometimes it's nicer to do a film.
You mean somebody seriously calls you and says you have to be in one of my films? Or I blow your head off?
Yeah.
That happens to normal
and not
people?
so nicely as you're saying it.
No, I'm saying it in a joyous American way.
Yeah.
But, I mean, somebody's actually phoned you on the phone?
Yeah, they would. They would tell you that.
And so you walk around the streets? I mean, you're free to skip and run?
You have security. You normally carry around.
But why is it in India? Where did these guys get actually into the position to run the film industry?
The biggest industry in India right now, or the easiest industry to take on right now, is the film industry. We are the largest producers of films in the world.
So they must be back in the film to say, I want you in my film.
They do try to back a film.
Right.
They try to create a product. They'll have 4 or 5 of their guys here, and they'll say, okay, Shah Rukh, you have to do this film, or X hero, you have to do this film, X heroine, you have to do this film. And I said, well, who's the producer? They say, okay, this is the guy we're sending you. Talk to him, sign the film. So if you're scared for life, then you sign it. Or if you're ready to take your chances, you say, no, I'm not.
So have you ever had your life threatened?
Oh yes, I've had it on many occasions. But
as someone who has had true crime podcasts cover my story and that of my loved ones, I wanted to talk about some of the things that they have done wrong so that we can not replicate these mistakes. Podcast names are a huge indicator of whether or not it's going to be handled respectfully. Big names like My Favorite Murder and smaller names that have covered my story like Bloodshed and Bruise and Popcorn Murder Stories, those are shitty names and they are blatantly disrespectful just at their core. And in that same vein, you need to run away from any podcast that bills itself as both a true crime podcast and a comedy podcast. Those two things do not go together at all, ever. These podcasts really need to consider why they are covering the cases that they're covering. Cold cases, missing persons cases, and cases in which the families are pushing for media attention, those make sense to cover if you include the families. Otherwise, it's just for shock value, and that's fucked up. I'll make a part 2.
Today I'm going to tell you a heartbreaking story about this precious little girl named Zoe Hancock. This adorable little girl is Zoe Hancock, and when she was 3.5 years old, on March the 20th, 2018, she died when she was at her home daycare. Zoe's mom, Debbie, found a home daycare that was close to their house in Regina, Saskatchewan, in Canada. She had interviewed the daycare provider named Ashley, and she said that she was comfortable with Ashley because Ashley had her own daughter. She said that it was close to her home, so it was really convenient. There were even cameras in certain designated areas in the house, so she felt like comfortable sending her daughter there. But only a few weeks in, she noticed Zoe's behavior changing. She noticed a few signs of regression in Zoe's behavior. She would sometimes wake up crying at night. And when they were on their way to the daycare in the mornings, when they got closer to Ashley's house, she would notice that Zoe would start throwing a fit. She would start crying, and she acted like she was scared of Ashley. March 20th, 2018, at 7:45 in the morning, Debbie dropped an extremely healthy Zoe off at the daycare and went on to work. But by 9:30, Ashley called her on the phone and she was panicked. She told Debbie that Zoe was unconscious. So immediately, Debbie said to her, well, call 911. Have you called 911 yet? Like, what's going on? Of course, Debbie left work immediately and drove straight to the daycare. And she arrived at the daycare. She realized that Ashley had never called 911. She had never attempted CPR on Zoe. Zoe was blue. She was limp. She was completely unresponsive. Debbie herself called 911 and immediately started doing CPR until the ambulance arrived. At the hospital, the doctors were constantly asking Debbie, what happened? What's going on? Is she choking on something? But Debbie could not give them any answers. She had no idea what had happened. Zoe passed away in Debbie's arms at the hospital. Zoe had sustained severe head trauma to the back of her head. She had a massive brain bleed, and that's what had caused her to die. There was a 3.5-inch fracture at the back of her head, caused by blunt force trauma. Police shortly showed up at the hospital and told Debbie that this was now a murder investigation and they had to pry Zoe from her arms. So the question then was, what had happened? What could have caused such a severe injury to this little 3-year-old girl? The one person who could have given all of the answers was Ashley. Come back for part 2. This is part 2 of the story of little Zoe Hancock, who was only 3.5 years old when her life was cut short. Ashley, the daycare provider, had been looking after 5 kids at her home that day. Initially, Ashley was charged with manslaughter, but she was acquitted. Her case was basically thrown out by the judge because even though there was evidence, and according to Debbie, there was a lot of evidence, Ashley's confession was thrown out by the judge. Ultimately, Ashley was never held accountable for what happened to Zoe in her own home. Zoe's mom, Debbie, regrets ever leaving her alone at this home daycare. She regrets not paying closer attention to the signs that, looking back, she can see that probably Zoe was scared of Ashley for weeks leading up to her death. Debbie wishes that she had done a more thorough background check on Ashley because she would have discovered prior child abuse charges against her. Debbie's entire life has been impacted by little Zoe's death. When I asked Debbie, what do you want people to know about your story? She said, I want people to know about Zoe. Zoe was fun-loving. She loved animals, especially bunnies. She was full of life and full of love. She also wants people to know how important it is to do a thorough background check on home daycares and to really trust your gut when it comes to who you're leaving your child with. Trust your gut when it comes to how your child is acting and behaving around others. There has been no justice for Zoe. It's just so unfair the way that the justice system works or doesn't work. I cannot imagine as a mother what Debbie has had to go through. It breaks my heart. Her community was able to raise money to set up a memorial bench in the park that Zoe loved to visit. And then she also was able to donate some money to the SPCA in Zoe's name.
Central C was also born in Ladbroke Grove, but is a couple years older than Digger. But Central C moved around 5 minutes away from Grove, to an area called Shepherd's Bush, another quite notoriously dangerous area in West London, and you will soon learn why this location switch for Central C was important in his feud with the rapper Digger D. Now Digger D and Central C actually went to school with each other. They both attended Chelsea Academy School in West London, but Digger D got kicked out of school in the start of year 8, so the pair didn't really have many run-ins with each other at school, and Central C was quite quiet and low-key in school, so he probably wasn't easily noticed. But from school, both rappers took completely different paths. Central C from around 2015 started trying to launch his music career with a song on the music platform called Street Heat, and he even managed to get onto a remix with big East London rapper J Hus in early 2015. Around the same time, he had to support his family, and with his music career not launching yet, he had to get it in another way. He previously had a job at a shoe store but left less than a month in, and just like many other kids in London, he started the cycle of going to OT to make some fast money. On the other side, in 2015, Digger D started getting his face more beta on the roads. Back in 2015, Shepherd's Bush and Ladbroke Grove actually used to be part of one gang called 916, alongside some other areas in West London, and you can even see a young Digger in the 916 music video from the rapper John 5 in his song Ain't Scared. But in 2016, internal disputes inside the 916 gang split the whole group apart, creating several different break-off batches in West London. The 916 members from Ladbroke Grove broke off and continued to use the name 916, but eventually started repping the name 1011, which represented the 2 postcodes across Ladbroke Grove, which are W10 and W11. And 916 members from Shepherd's Bush divided into 2 different sets called 12 World and 12 Anti. The same year, Digger D dropped his first music video called Hella Bands, where you can see other 1011 members, and that was the start of what we know Digger D to be now. Throughout 2016 and 17, putting on other 1011 members onto his tracks, and 1011 started to blow up faster than anyone in the scene at the time. You may be asking why they blew up so fast. 1011 were really the first UK drill group to have no filter at all, literally just saying the hottest stuff on beats, describing specific events quite graphically, which is something drill rappers didn't really do to the extent at that time. But one of the main reasons for 1011's blow up was the constant mocking of a murder which took place in 2017, an opposition member called T-Wiz. So it was April 2017, early in the afternoon, and T-Wiz had just stepped out of his house in Norfolk, West London, which is an op block to the 1011 gang. T-Wiz was then approached by 2 guys from an opposing gang called Rayners Lane, who are linked with 1011, and once they spotted T-Wiz, they stabbed him in the stomach and ran from the scene. T-Wiz then tried to run to a nearby alleyway around 100 yards from his house, but collapsed and died. Digga D and 1011 would mock T-Wiz's death in pretty much every song. So 2 men were put on trial for the murder, one being a guy who went by the name T-Rose, but both guys actually ended up beating the murder charge due to claims of self-defense. After beating the case, T-Rose then went on and made a drill song, not only mocking T-Wiz's death, but he went and reenacted the murder in the music video. But stuff started getting hot for T-Rose, so he went and moved around 3 hours away to the north of England in a town called Telford. That didn't stop anyone, because T-Rose was shot 5 times and killed in broad daylight, even after moving to the other side of the country. But let's take it back to 2017. The beef between Digga D's 1011 and Central C's Shepherd's Bush was getting serious. During this, Digga D really started making a name for himself, with his tune called No Hook and his Next Up track starting to rack up some big views. And even though all of his songs would be featured by other 1011 members, it was clear Digga was the star of the group, and he even started to attract a lot of international attention to the UK drill scene. But with the constant release of diss tracks, the beef was only becoming hotter, which eventually caught up to Digga and 1011 members. While all of this was going on, Digga's gang, 1011, had been getting investigated and tracked on every movement they made. On the 9th of November 2019, Digga and 4 other members were riding out when their car got stopped near Portobello Road in Ladbroke Grove. Digga tried to make a run for it with his face covered, but he didn't get far and was taken down and arrested by the police, where he was found with a large machete down his trouser leg. 1 more machete, a knife and 2 baseball bats were also recovered in the car or on the members. All 5 members were sentenced to conspiracy to commit violent disorder, with the older members receiving prison sentences. But Digga D at the time was only 17, so got a lighter sentence of a year in a detention unit. Originally, the members stated that the weapons were for props for a music video, but after the piled up evidence, they all pleaded guilty to their charges, and this could have very much been the beginning of the end for Digga D. They even played his music at court, where they showed he referenced real life unsolved crimes in his area, which caused the police to get YouTube to take down most of Digga D's songs, including his Next Up, which was one of the most viewed UK drill songs at the time, with 11 million views, even putting Digga D on Channel 4 News to make an example of him to others. Digga was also slapped with a criminal behaviour order, which prevented him from writing lyrics on his rivals and mentioning dead people like T-Wiz. This was quite a turning point for UK drill, because after this we started seeing more and more drill songs getting taken down, which started to cause drill artists to water down and censor their lyrics to stop this from happening. Then on October 8th, 2018, Digga was fresh home.
Boy, for nasty. But you get me?
But it just seemed like he still couldn't keep himself out of trouble. Now this is where Central C now gets involved in this story. Now at this time in 2018, Central C was starting to build a steady name for himself. He was already blowing up on Instagram with his unique type of drip and his pretty boy looks. But his music wasn't quite blowing up yet, with a more wavy type of sound, which was kind of what everyone else was sounding like at the time. But what happened on the 30th of November 2018 might have been a big reason due to his quite drastic career and sound change. So Central C alongside his brother and some other guys were posted up near a Sainsbury's store on Davisville Road in Shepherd's Bush when they were approached by 2 males. They started getting into some sort of verbal altercation. One of the males pulled out a knife and stabbed Central C's brother just under his left shoulder and then cut from the scene. Central C and his brother then went inside the Sainsbury's store where the police came and they started to treat the wound. 2 men were arrested for this, one of the men being Digga D. Digga D and his friend were eventually released due to lack of evidence, and Central C went kind of MIA for a little while, but Digga just couldn't stay out of trouble. On January the 2nd, 2019, at around 7 PM, police was called to Harrow Road in West London due to a large fight between around 20 people. Harrow Road is the area of another West London popular rapper called Fredo, and also happens to be another area Digga has conflict with. After this fight, it was reported that 2 men were stabbed from the altercation. Digga, along with 2 other 1011 members, Savo and ZK, were arrested alongside some other members of the HRB gang, who was on the other side of the conflict. Digga was arrested and sent back to prison for 2 years and 6 months. Luckily, before Digga went inside, he had already finished up his debut album, Double Tap Diaries, and recorded some music videos to some of the tracks. This album is kind of what blew him up to the next level, because before this he didn't